breaking news today that we're going to be talking about. We'll also talk about this Baylor class, and we'll talk about the people who actually, I mean, it was kind of sad that year Novosad dropped out, and people weren't talking about the actual class. And there were players, and this is the culmination of many years of playing Pop Warner in junior high and high school, and they have this huge announcement. There's part of me that hates letting the story, right, the big headliner for Baylor, which is they lost all these guys. They lost like 5 people in this recruiting class, kind of like right as they were, needing to cross the goal line. I will say Aranda was very upfront about it and just said it was a fight. Certainly it's disappointing that they couldn't do it. And there were players in this group. Quinn Murphy's one of them, Scotty's favorite, probably from this class. He was upset and, trying to keep everybody together, and the guys were fighting. So what I like to do on this day, Scotty, is to, whether it's via graphic or whether it's you just reading a few of the names, I like to honor these kids that actually held to what they were going to do. And Dave was very quick not to be mad at the people who decommitted, and in fact said, hey, they got to know their families, and who knows what could happen down the road. So he does not seem like a guy who's going to burn bridges.
Well, in this era of portal stuff, how many times have we already seen kids transfer, and their first thought to transfer is the programs that did a good job recruiting them out of high school? So, I wish all these kids well and success, but if a Carlton or a Vincent or a Jordan Clay has a rough freshman season, doesn't play as much as they like, struggle, doesn't fit, whatever, the first place they're going to be inclined to call this time next year if they think about transferring is Baylor. And so you have to take that approach. Not that you expect any of those guys to end up in Waco, but you gotta take that approach.
Yeah, and I passed some of those assistant coaches. We did this thing today in that Fudge Development Center. What a nice place. Jeremy Fudge, my old college buddy. It was a nice deal, and I got to go down the hall, Scotty. I was called upon to get to kind of peek in. I had, in the old complex, I had, of course, done interviews in Matt Rule's office and had been in Art's office. I remember Art one time hollering down to somebody, Heath Nilsson or somebody, get Mosley, one of those. It was when I wasn't really covering the team. I was more of a fan, more just, hey, that's my alma mater. I'm going to stop by and see everybody. And Scotty, you'll remember this because you were either in school or right before you went to Baylor. Like they had these great, Art used to wear those black windbreakers on the sideline.
Yeah.
I always wanted one. And so I told Art one day I was at his office, and Art starts calling around the building. Yo, can y'all find Mosley one of those black windbreakers? And boy, I had it for years. I don't know what happened to it, but it was one of my all-time favorites. But there we were. So I'm in a different role now. And, I will say that Dave Aranda, though, and I don't know how this is going to go. There was a question in the press conference today where Smokey asked something along the line. I was asking, like, hey, what does a coach need for an AD? What does I forget. I had 2 or 3 questions. I'm sure, Scotty, that were great questions. Maybe we'll listen to them tomorrow. I can't really remember. They were so great, I barely remember them. But I felt like we were all asking some pretty good things. And Dave was trying to give the best answers he could, because next I kind of wanted to know too, what are you going to do with the staff? Like, how quickly does that need to happen? And now that they've had signing day, that's going to start happening in a hurry. All right. And I also, and so at some point, Smokey, and remind me, Scotty, as we get to the 2:00 hour, I floated an AD name out yesterday, and it was met with a collective, just everybody's mad. It's like, oh, they're like mad at me. I'm not interviewing these people. I just heard a potential name for AD. And I kind of threw it out yesterday on Twitter, and people lost their minds. They didn't like the name, and the people where he's an AD now don't like him. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. But we will cover that. Scotty, Smokey says something like, Dave, at your age, and I guess what he's saying is Dave's probably, what, 48, 49? He's, maybe pushing 50 at this point. Can you change? Can you, because like, Aranda has indicated, whether it be with the media, other things, I need to change. And so Smokey was like, can you change at this age? Kind of like, you've been here 6 years. This is about to be the 7th year. And Aranda was like, yeah, absolutely. I can change. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then when asked about like, okay, what could those changes be? He just was like, I've got to look at everything. Somebody asked him like what success looks like next year. And he said, well, I kind of need to see us put this team together. And before I say what that is, but he understands it can't be this again. Like they can't. He's got zero shot of lasting if he goes 5-7 or even 6-6. He acknowledged that. He said, and I'm looking down. In fact, I'll put on my regular glasses, even though these lights are just really something. He said got to look at when asked about what the change. I think they're going to evaluate everything. Got to look at everything. Got to look at how we lift, how we defend. He didn't necessarily say for sure he was giving up play calling. He did say he had to work through, the way I remember it. Let's see if I wrote that down. He said that he has to work through his status. Now, obviously, he's coming back, so not his job status. And I did hear him later in the day say something about like how he said it almost in passing. It wasn't like, feel sorry for me, but he was like, I know what it is for everybody not to want me here or something like that. And so I think people that think he doesn't get it or doesn't look, and he doesn't check social media and all that kind of stuff, but he does enough. He has enough self-awareness that a lot of people wanted him gone. And he knows they've got their work cut out for him. And these questions were asked about NIL and does Baylor have enough and what's Baylor going to do and all that kind of stuff. And he's going to try to do, and even people were asking like, you need 10 million, like, what do you need? And he's like, basically, we need all we can get. We need every bit we can get. I think now from an NIL perspective, every Power 4 school in Texas is ahead of Baylor. Scotty, can you think of someone who might not be? Like Power 4 I'm talking about. And SMU obviously has joined the ranks in the ACC. I think Baylor's behind them. And that happened in a hurry because SMU raised all that money to go in the ACC. I do not think there was a time when Chad Morris was there and Baylor was thinking about hiring him. And that would have been a no-brainer for Chad Morris to come to Baylor. Now, I do not think, given the current status of Baylor and NIL and portal and everything, I don't think this would be some kind of move up for Rhett Lashley. As much as we would like to think it is, I don't think that's the case. So, Scotty, am I not thinking of anybody? I think Baylor, when it comes to Power 4 schools in the state of Texas, is last, right? There's nobody. I can't think of anybody else that would.
I still struggle, Matt. I understand your logic.
It's not logic. I mean, I'm saying I think it's just flat out a fact that we don't have the money that SMU has.
Well, I struggle to put us underneath SMU. I understand, though. I understand your argument. I can ruminate upon that. But I struggle with that. I do. From a historical perspective, heck, we just had our worst season in a long time, and we beat them in September.
True. But in terms of NIL, I'm not sure it's close. I don't know if it's.
Yeah, I just don't know. I just think at your peak, it's.
Well, we're not.
Again, maybe I'm naive, and you live in Dallas, and so I don't have the greatest perspective. I think you can still.
You think I'm too close to
recruit?
The SMU campus?
I think you can recruit and build better here. I think the facilities are better here. But hey, whether we're splitting hairs against SMU or whatnot, Baylor is certainly behind the big schools, A&M, UT, certainly behind Tech at this point, which might be leading the state by now. UNT, not a Power 4 school. If they win this weekend, they're in the playoff. I mean, I would never say that's a better job than Baylor, but there's a Texas school that feels better today than Baylor does. So Baylor's in dire straits, no matter how you split hairs here.
Exactly. He was asked if he wanted any say, like in the AD, and which come on. I mean, like, what are they going to do, Dave? Would you like to come on the search with us? What are you looking for?
Yeah, that's
Dave
ridiculous.
AD?
That's ridiculous.
And so he said, no, I've got other things to work on, which is obvious. And he said, of President Livingstone, she's amazing, so I trust in them. He mentioned Jovan and Cody. All of this is in really good hands, he said. And then he said, we've got to, quote, find ways to get more and more money. Find ways to get more and more money. It may be too late. He did say that, and I wrote this down now. I got he said, get my status on defense figured out, is what he said about himself. So he's got to decide who's calling plays. Are they going to bring in a new defense coordinator? What that's all going to look like. So it was an interesting day. Now, just to be full transparency, I've said loudly on here plenty of times that, Dave has not helped himself with the media. It could have done so much more, and that hasn't been great. And I think they've tried to get him to do more. And I did see signs today. So if the question is, can he change? Maybe. I had a really interesting kind of private visit with the head coach today, and I saw signs of a guy who may be ready to do the thing that I saw Parcells and Art and Bryles and Rule and anybody have really ever been around. These coaches understand it does not hurt them one bit to have some relationships in the media. I mean, it's why right now people are watching us, Scotty, is because, like, over the years I've had all these relationships with these ADs, and so I know them and know who's being contacted and all that kind of stuff. Well, they get it. All these people understand, and for whatever reason, Dave just did not really see value in that. That's okay. Like, when you're winning, if you don't see value in it, I get it. You're just like, well, things are going pretty well, but they did not capitalize on what happened in 2021, and then they were slow on the NIL. And they're even now are still behind in both NIL portal. Now, the silver lining in all of this, Scotty, it's like, okay, Mosley, we're in a full state of depression. We're all on the ground crying and doing all that. All these guys that left, which there's like 5 of them, I would say 3 of them were getting really good money. How much money did that free up? 1.4 million, 1.5 million, 3 guys, somewhere around there is what I would say. The 2 Jamarians and Jordan, and we got 2 Jamarians left. I like these Jamarians that stayed with us. And what happened, 17 years ago to have all these moms and dads name their kids Jamarian. I love the name. It's got a great, but it's just so interesting that it's become such a popular name, or at least in that time frame, it was extremely popular. Scotty, who is the most famous Jamarian that we know? Is it like one of these kids or one of these current? Do we have any Jamarians that we know, like that are a little bit older in the field of entertainment? Or
the first name that came to mind was Overshone, who's just a few years older than these kids.
Wait, who are you? What do you mean Overshone?
Oh, his name's DeMarvian.
Yeah.
Okay. So there goes that. Sorry.
That's a good theory. Okay, so this is a new batch of Jamarians.
Yeah. I'm struggling to think of one.
Okay. There's got to be somebody. I bet there's a couple of decent Jamarians in the NFL. But anyway, the two that stayed, and there was one guy that kind of got my attention today. And Scotty, I wanted to feature him when you talk about this Baylor class, because there's a couple of different ways you can do this. We can come on here and we can talk about all the horrible decommits and, oh my gosh, what a dark day. And I get all that. But they did end up with, I don't know, 10 to 15 players that hopefully will turn out well. And now, what I was getting at, Scotty, is that money that they were not paying the two Jamarians, Jordan, they can now go into the portal. And that is where Dave has made it extremely clear they've got to hit on these defensive linemen and offensive linemen and build inside out. And then ask about, well, you kind of whiffed on a couple of them in this last portal. Like, do you need to reevaluate your do you need to look at your evaluation process? He said, absolutely. I mean, I think now you look more at production, traits. There's a lot. I mean, I think they're having to kind of strip it down and start over looking at these things. Scotty, now you probably have the class pulled up in front of you. There's a young man, just correct me if I have the name wrong, but Tyrone Morgan.
Yep.
Remind me where Tyrone is from. Is he Dallas area? Is he from Louisiana? Where is Tyrone Morgan from? He may be a Louisiana kid. But the thing I loved hearing Dave say about him today is that almost every morning to Dave,
Baton Rouge,
and his teammates, okay, cool, and his coaches, like, he's sending all these motivational messages each morning already. The kid's still in high school. He has not reported. Now, maybe he'll be one of those early guys that shows up in January. I don't know. But like this guy all along this time has already started sending everybody. So I always love some of these kids that have probably been huge leaders at their high school, and then they're already doing that. I think Quinn obviously is a great leader, plays for Jason Witten there at Liberty, to Argyle Liberty. And one thing Dave did today, for those of us in the media, that we all gathered in this big theater, and he just put all these players on tape, and he just went through some of their highlights and talked about what they did, and he said this kind of cornerback and this. I also thought we got some interesting information, Scotty, on like how sometimes we see things. Like I don't necessarily come out of this season thinking like the corners were great this year or anything like. And he didn't try to say that, but he did say, if we're wondering like which coaches are safe and that kind of thing, he thought Paul Gonzalez did a great job, and he actually thought the corners on this team overachieved.
I agree with him. Yeah. And we knew that when we brought Paul Gonzalez in, that he has a strong reputation in having coached under Coach Patterson for so long, for elite defenses, putting guys in the NFL from that position. And I thought so too. If you think about LeVar Thornton, young Caldwell Williford, struggled at times, but made plays at times. I think a couple of those guys really overperformed what we expected of them.
LeVar and who was yeah, I guess so. I just think I was so let down by just the overall performance that I had trouble singling out any one group.
It's totally fair, but I think where you saw Baylor's defense getting beat this year was at the point of attack, and in the run game and run fits, and when we talked about that seemingly all season long, where Baylor got beat a lot last year that they did not this year was on the deep ball, or wide receivers making big plays. I mean, Jordan Tyson had arguably his worst game of the season while he was playing against Baylor. Baylor secondary did really well against him. Now, teams don't have to throw the ball at you as much when they can gash you up the middle for,
As I recall, Auburn didn't really have to throw it all.
At all.
They ran like crazy, and the quarterbacks ran roughshod over this team. But that's interesting to see it evaluated that way, and that the corners at least had a good season. I'll be very interested to see who calls plays for this defense. If they bring in a defensive coordinator, I think I don't know what they'll do. Like Matt Pallage, I'm not sure what his future is. I would just say, he was praised today by Dave Keenan and Dallas and Pallage for like the work they put into this class. And think about how devastated you guys feel out there. Some of the Baylor fans, and oh my gosh, we lost these kids. Oh, this is horrible. Well, think about the guys that like actually know these kids, spend years working on this, and then the excitement of getting these commitments in the Waco area just to lose them to Michigan and Texas at the last minute. And Dave could have taken the easy route today of saying, yeah, we didn't have enough NIL money, or they beat us on money. And he didn't say that. He said it comes down to wins and losses. It comes down to we didn't win enough. We didn't win enough to close these guys. I like that. I appreciate that. I mean, did Texas come in and have more money to spend than Baylor for one of the Jamarians, Carlton? Yeah, I'm sure they did. And so, but you don't want your coach up there saying, well, we got money whipped. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's what happened. But he said we did not win enough to close those deals. So, and you know what? I think, and part of this may be self-preservation, but I think Dave's I heard things today, and I'm not saying, oh my gosh, everything's going to be different. Next year is going to be great. I don't know. He understands how bad this situation is. And I think he has an inherent understanding of how fortunate he is to keep coaching this team. And it took some weird circumstances to have that happen. I will just say I encountered a different Dave Aranda today, and I ended up having a bit of a private conversation with him. And I've always said this, like I remember seeing him at the Big 12 Media Days after he'd lost his father, and we had a little one-on-one time, and I just thought, and he was like very open and candid, and I remember thinking, my gosh, this guy is kind of amazing when you get to visit with him, and yet he won't let most people see that or be a part of that. So, I see glimpses every now and then of like why people in the building, are willing to fight for him. Again, none of that matters when you're 5-7 or you're losing, and he understands that as well as anybody. I just think, and it'll be interesting, and it may not be enough. Here's what the fan base would love to see. It's just them throw some haymakers in. Baylor needs some wins. They don't, these kids are great. We're going to talk about them. We'll talk about some of these recruits. We're about to talk about this K-State situation. What a weird thing to wake up to K-State fans. And I'm sure a lot of the fans are excited because they apparently had a line of succession ready to roll. But, I think there are people that are part of that program and still kind of like in a little bit of shock what's happened there. But what Baylor needs, Scotty, is some big-time wins. And it's not going to happen this year in the win column. It's not going to happen in the let's go 9-3. Oh, could the Bears get in it? Nope. It's already gone. Can't do that. They could get some wins in the portal. And, Scotty, we both know that it's all it takes is to get some momentum. Let me tell you how you get momentum. You either start landing, when the portal opens in a month, you come out firing and you get some people and you put together some incredible portal class, and maybe Baylor's put a little bit of a war chest and they have a new AD and there's a vision, there's some clarity about where you're heading. Maybe that gets it. There's another thing, Scotty, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do it or whatever. I heard, there are some positions on this staff, and I heard recently a possible change that could happen. And I'm not going to say the name because I don't, what if they don't make a change? And then the person who still has a job is going to feel really weird, right? It's the way it works. But there is a position on this staff that if the person is hired that I think they kind of want, it would it would jazz the fan base. It's not going to make up for all of it, but it would give the fan base a moment of a fist pump, like one solid fist pump. Really all we're needing right now is just kind of.
I have some suspicions, by the way.
Gotta win. I know we're not going to guess. We're not going to guess.
I'm going to guess on the break.
You can say anything you want off air, but we're not going to.
No
on-air guesses. And but it just interesting things are happening. But I did encounter, I don't know, this guy. I encountered a human today, and I think sometimes we just kind of see the football droid or like a football robot, Dave. Like this guy's, I mean, is he really? He's talking about how they were in practice. Like I encountered a human being today, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that experience. And yes, if you're wondering, I'm representing for my local high school today because it is National Early Signing Day.